Hey everyone, welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. Last time we got everything set up, and now it's time for our intrepid crew to do their part. Nedry and Janmore have been on their ship for 1 year and 221 days. And they don't really have the best living conditions. This is Janmore here. She's got a whole bunch of numbers to look at, but the most interesting thing is that altitude dial spinning around. And not much else. Nedry's sitting here in the back, and they can't even look at each other. Makes it hard to play cards or board games or whatever. But luckily, Kerbals are naturally extremely patient, so they're still happy. Now you can see Drez back there in the distance, just off to the right of the ship, and it's about time we get in position. Okay, so we're going to circularize here. Looks like we're 5 degrees or so off from being a perfect equatorial orbit, which is pretty good considering how far out we planned this encounter. 27 kilometers up, that still counts as high over the planet, which doesn't really mean anything except for the science you do. You can also get closer, but it really doesn't make too much of a difference. We're going to do a quick fly over here just to figure out where everything is. That pink square is the landing site with the rover and everything. So it's currently in nighttime, so we're going to have to wait for that to come around to the day side of the planet. Which is good because we need to do some science up here in orbit. But we want to wait for us to be in the day side to do that as well. The one other thing I want to mention is that I have less fuel than I was hoping for. I either didn't do so well on my maneuvers, or I didn't give myself enough of a factor of safety, but running a little close to the margins on fuel. So the science experiments give you some flavor text. I mentioned that in other videos. They're not always super interesting. The crew report talks about a giant canyon on the surface, which is kind of cool because that is a specific place you can go. And the only other one that's kind of interesting is the gravity scan here that says that the gravitational pull is quite low for a planet. And that's probably because, you know, in real life, Ceres isn't a planet, it's just a very, very big asteroid. Now that we've run our experiments, Nedry is going to get kind of a cool opportunity here to stretch his legs. because we need to send him out to reset the experiments. This is one of those skills that scientists have that makes them worth taking along on these missions, is that they can reset some of the experiments which are normally one-time use. And that way you can get multiple results. So I designed this ship with some handholds so that he doesn't float away while he's working. And he's just going to restore these experiments, and we're going to go back to Jan Moore in the ship, and she's going to run them again. I think I brought 4 science containers, which means we can take 4 of each type of experiment for redundancy. So we're just going to speed through doing that. And Nedry's going to take the opportunity just to sort of enjoy floating around. This is the farthest that any Kerbal has been from Kerbin. Very cool. So now it's time to get ready for our descent. We're going to separate the lander from the transfer stage there. Those of you who aren't super into space missions may not know that is how like the real life Apollo moon landings were done. They leave the larger part of the ship up in orbit, send the lander down, and then bring it back up and dock. It turns out it takes quite a bit of fuel to get home, and bringing all that fuel down to the surface is a big waste because then you have to launch it back up again. So the plan is to bring the lander down with just as much fuel as we need, bring it up with even less mass, and meet back up with the rest of our ship. There's that giant canyon there underneath us, actually. And there's our landing site. So it's just, I guess, sunrise down there. So one more rotation and then we're gonna land. Now, I'm going to do something a little bit different here. I'm actually going to use MechJeb, the flight computer, to land the ship for me. The nice thing about this is, I've already pre-entered the target coordinates there that we got last time, and then we just click a button and it should land us. Now, the landing guidance is a little bit less, less good than the regular maneuver planning. It just works a little bit differently. It doesn't orient the ship in the direction it wants to be, and it doesn't give itself lead time before burns. So before every burn, it just kind of quickly gets in position and then fires the rockets before it's stable. And that results in the ship kind of wobbling a little bit. It's not a huge deal. It's probably less fuel efficient than maybe it could be, but it's probably still more fuel efficient than if I was doing this manually, so it's probably overall a win. The other thing about the landing module, landing guidance system, is that it doesn't seem to take the planet's rotation into account. And this sort of works fine on the moon or Minmus, the other moon, because they rotate so slowly. But Dres actually rotates relatively quickly, and when it doesn't take the rotation into account, we're actually not going to hit our desired landing spot. There we go, on our way down, and we're landing about 100 meters west of where we wanted to, which means we're going to be on the hill, just like our little radar station. Which I'm going to try not to complain about too much, because other than that, it is a perfect landing. And there we go. First thing we want to do is our science again, just like in orbit. Again, they don't say anything super interesting. Now, because Nedry's closest to the door, and because he needs to reset the experiments again, he gets to be the first one out the door. And that's maybe a mistake. He's a little irresponsible, so he doesn't even use the ladder. I brought that for a reason, man. But luckily Dres is very low gravity, similar to the moon actually. So, yahoo! And this is going to be very similar to what we did in orbit. It just, he can stand on the ground instead of holding onto the handholds. I'm going to skip through all the repetitions of the experiments. least the ladder's going to see a little bit of use. He's got to go deposit his surface samples, which is the one important experiment that you can't do in orbit. Our rover that was nicely positioned for the planned landing spot now needs to go for a little bit of a drive to get in position. We'll be using this very shortly. Okay, and now finally everything is ready on the ground. Time for Jan Moore to get her turn. Let's see if she's going to be responsible and use the ladder. Close, close, close. Nope. Oh well. Jan Moore is still the responsible one of the two, so she gets to plant the flag. And there we go, we get to write a little blurb here, so first Kerbals on Dres, and then underneath we'll put Hera mission is a success. Which I sort of realize is maybe a little premature, since part of the mission is getting back home. I've been reading a little bit about Mount Everest lately, and similarly there, getting to the top of the mountain doesn't count unless you get back down. And we'll take a nice little photo to send back to Command. Okay, now it's finally rover time. So our rover has a couple seats for our crew. They are maybe slightly too close together, but that's okay. They've been cramped up in a little pod for a year, almost 2 years. I think they can sit close together. Now from here we need to decide where we want to go. We could go down into that crater, or over to the canyon, although that's pretty far. Maybe we can go up to that other crater. So this is where I want to talk about rovers finally. Rovers are... they're very fun to design and build. And they are often kind of fun to drive, especially in low gravity. But the problem is that they're slow. They are fun to drive, but in order to get anywhere useful, it takes a very long time. So I specifically chose the landing site so that it was close to a couple other biomes so that we could go and do more science. But still, in order for us to drive to any of those biomes, it's going to take a while. So like this trip here that we're going to do took something like 15 or 20 minutes of me just holding down the W key on the keyboard, which is not exactly engaging gameplay. Although when you get to get some awesome air, that's fun. That was not quite so awesome, but you get the idea. Now, I did mention at the beginning that I'm on 1.3, I think, several versions behind. I believe in one of the newest versions of the game they added surface features that rovers can investigate for more science. So that actually gives them more of a purpose other than just driving around and carrying the regular experiments. The thing about the regular experiments is that almost always it's actually quicker and easier to just bring some extra fuel instead of a rover and then picking up your whole ship and landing it in a different biome. But we're getting there. I think as soon as we crest the top of this hill, we'll be in the other biome. And there we are. Now we're in the Midlands. I guess Jan Moore's just looking for a nice flat spot to park. And we're going to do the same experiments. And again, it's a lot of the same sort of boiler text results. I know there's a couple mods that give more interesting experiment result text, but I don't have any of those installed. And more redundant versions of our results. Now the rover only has 2 science containers, so we can only do the experiments twice. Now from here I'm trying to decide what to do next. We could go down into the big crater, but I'm realizing that might be a little too risky. We should probably go back to the ship first, drop off our experiments, just so that if something goes wrong, we'll at least have the science we've already done. Okay, see, now that was some pretty good hang time. Now, here's the other thing about rovers. Going down seems like it'll be a lot easier, and it is, but you can pick up a lot of speed, and that's more dangerous. Well, this is going to be a little bit of a problem. But we'll deal with that next time. Thanks for watching. See you later.